Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Fresh Wave podcast that is for youth, by youth.
And Johnny.
Today, we are on Season 4, Episode 5, and we are continuing our series of questions that the youth gave to us and ideas that they wanted submitted. And today, we're going to be talking about loving your neighbor. I hope you all had an excellent week, and here's the episode.
Not take any vengeance or bear a grudge against any of your people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. Leviticus 19:18.
Now that is something that is challenging to do because people sin. There we go. That'll kick us off. That is hard in our day-to-day with even the people you love the most, right? Whether you know them well or don't, it's challenging.
Right. All of the commands fall from love, so it's definitely important to recognize that the moral law is driven from God's love and from the fact that love is on the two commandments. I'm reading the verse of Matthew 22:40. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets. So knowing if we can't love our neighbor, we can't derive anything else in our lives. All of those fall onto it. So I guess that would kind of summarize the importance of it. What are some challenges do you think we face when we're trying to love our neighbor, or what can come into play there with that?
I think it's hard to love your neighbor if you don't love yourself. And I also think it's hard to love your neighbor if they don't love you the way you want them to love you. So I think we hold a lot of grudges, and as the verse says, not to bear grievances against anyone, and it's just sometimes hard to do, to pay respect to people who don't respect you.
Yeah, absolutely. I would add, I think, pride and unforgiveness. So I think if we're too prideful to either become, or too prideful to love somebody that's different than us, I think is a big one, different in whichever way you want to say. And then I think unforgiveness is another big one where, like I said when we started, right, we all we hurt people by accident or just foolishness, whatever it is. And when that's done to us, are we able to forgive them well and continue a friendship and be able to love them through that? So I think the pride and unforgiveness can really hinder us from loving our neighbors as well.
Right. As you both mentioned, like those feelings of feeling superior or inferior are both like not godly. Trying to feel better than the person next to you, but also kind of bringing yourself down in comparison and shame is also feeling inferior. So I guess that feeling of deflecting God's call to unity, like he so often calls us to be united with one another, and by not loving one another, we tend to tear ourselves down or tear someone else down. It destroys relationships that are built off love. Our relationship with Jesus is very well built off the love that he came to die for. So when we destroy those relationships, it's very clear that Satan is trying to cause division in our communities, and that's what destroys it.
Yeah, when have you seen loving your neighbor like produce something awesome in your life? Or maybe you've been loved by somebody in such a way?
I think all the time, because it's hard to form relationships and love other people if you don't love Jesus or if you don't love your neighbor. And I know it's really hard for me to love someone if the other person doesn't love me. Mm-hmm. So I think when other people love their neighbor or like me, I think it's a lot easier to love them and to love other people. So
yeah, that reciprocated love is very important. It's what God gives to us so freely, but it's always nice to see it in your own life. Like I had a friend recently give me a gift like out of nowhere, and it was like this artwork of Jesus like on a pottery wheel, and it was just like it had a little message with it and everything, and I just felt super like seen and understood in that moment. And it's so nice to know that someone is thinking of you, especially just as God is, like seeing that in your life, knowing that they care for you and having that's what like builds those bonds and those relationships.
Yeah, what makes God's love even more incredible is the aspect of unconditional love, which is no matter what we do, like he still loves us. So it's just kind of a whole another, the Greek word agape love that you've probably heard, is just, I'm going to love you no matter what, which is life-changing. And I think that's what we should strive for. We're imperfect, so we're not going to be as great as it as the Lord is. But I think the more we can strive to that for our friends and family and our neighbors, whoever we come in contact with, I think it would just be a great impact on everyone we meet.
Yeah, what are some ways do you think Jesus would want us to show that love to our neighbor, just even going forward this week? Like, what are some ways that we could do that, do you think?
Something I've been trying to grow in is just in being intentional with people. So I think for me, just being intentional with the conversations I have with people and being intentional with the things that I'm doing with people. So I think for me is being intentional in the love that I have for people.
It's a lot easier to love other people when you keep in mind that Jesus loves you and that you're given so much love every single day, and like he died on the cross for you. Simply knowing that is like, it's like life-changing.
Yeah, like trying not to see all those like faults in other people, knowing that God has freely given us the grace to cover our faults. And there's so much love that God has given us, we should be reciprocating, knowing that he died for them very purposefully. And I think something I'm trying to do better, I'm still working on it, is trying to listen better. I know people, like, especially myself, love to be understood and heard, and I want to reciprocate that to other people because you can tell how important it is when their message is gotten across to me, and I think that's very important. And it's what has built like a lot of my relationship, is if we both like listen to each other. That's super important to me.
Yeah, I have one last Bible verse before we end here, and it's in Colossians 3:12. It says, "Put on then as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience, bearing with one another, and if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other as the Lord has forgiven you, so you must also forgive. And above all these, put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony." So it's just like a great passage on how do we love our neighbors well with all these things that Paul lists here. So incredible verse to go to in terms of loving your neighbor.
Building off that verse, I would encourage everyone this week to think of their neighbor that they would like to love this week, whether it's a specific person or a specific situation you find yourself in, to just express that love.